The hum was a constant companion on Astra Prime, a deep thrumming resonance that vibrated through the deck plates and up into the bones of every soul aboard. It was the sound of containment, of energy held barely in check. The lifeblood of the station and the focus of Dr. Elias Vane's existence. He stood before the primary console of the quantum resonance chamber, his reflection a pale ghost against the swirling blues and purples of the energy field displayed on the main screen. Outside the reinforced viewport, the void of space was an infinite, silent black, speckled with the indifferent light of distant stars. Here, inside, Elias felt the universe held its breath, waiting. Years. It had taken years of calculations, simulations, failures, and near misses to reach this point. His hands moved with practiced certainty across the control interface, adjusting flux modulators and calibrating particle injectors. The goal was audacious, almost mythical. Clean energy drawn directly from the quantum foam, a source so fundamental it promised to rewrite civilization. Yet, the risks were commensurate with the prize. Disturbing the bedrock of reality was not a task for the faint of heart or the imprecise. Every variable had to be accounted for, every contingency planned. Elias adjusted his spectacles, leaning closer to a secondary monitor, displaying energy cascade projections. Stabilization sequence holding at 98%, he murmured, his voice a low counterpoint to the chamber's hum. Plasma injectors cycling within optimal parameters. Core resonance approaching predicted threshold. He felt a familiar thrill mix with the low-grade anxiety that always accompanied the final stages of an experiment. This was it, the culmination of his life's work. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Elias tapped the receiver icon integrated into the console. "Vane here, Doctor." The voice of Station Commander Ivanova was calm, professional, yet underscored with a tension that mirrored his own. Final readiness check complete. All non-essential personnel are secured in designated safe zones. We are green across the board for activation on your mark. Acknowledged, Commander, Elias replied, his eyes never leaving the energy readings. Initiating final countdown sequence now. Mark. He engaged the primary activation sequence. The hum deepened. The lights in the control room flickered once as power surged towards the chamber, and the swirling colors on the screen intensified, coalescing into a blinding white point of light at the core. Deep within the quantum resonance chamber, exotic particles collided at velocities approaching light speed, tearing microscopic, fleeting holes in the fabric of space-time. The energy yield climbed exponentially, precisely as predicted. A triumphant smile touched Elias's lips. It was working. It was actually working. Then, alarms blared, harsh and strident, cutting through the steady hum. Red lights flashed across the console, bathing Elias's face in an urgent crimson glow. Warning. Unforeseen energy spike detected, a synthesized voice announced. Devoid of panic but chilling in its neutrality. Containment field integrity dropping. 90%. 85. What? No, Elias breathed, his fingers flying across the controls, trying to initiate emergency dampening protocols. That's impossible. All simulations showed stability. The white light on the screen pulsed violently, radiating outward in concentric rings, distorting the readouts. 70%. 60. Commander. Elias yelled into the comms. Shut it down. Initiate emergency core flush. Now. Trying. Doctor. Ivanova's voice was strained. Controls are unresponsive. Something is interfering. Suddenly, a new alarm, sharper and more piercing, joined the cacophony. Warning. Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity. Non-responsive to hails. Course indicates direct intercept with Astra Prime. Elias stared, bewildered. An attack. Now, it made no sense. Before he could process the implications, a violent shudder rocked the entire station. Metal groaned under immense stress. On the main screen, amidst the chaotic energy readings, a proximity alert flashed. The unknown vessel was practically on top of them. Brace for impact. Ivanova's voice crackled, cut short by a deafening roar as something immense tore through the station's outer hull layers. In the control room, panels exploded in showers of sparks. The deck tilted violently, sending Elias stumbling against the console. He watched in horror as the containment field reading plummeted past the point of no return. The white light at the core of the chamber expanded exponentially, engulfing the screen, engulfing the room, engulfing everything in a silent, searing wave of pure energy and distorted time. Elias felt a sensation like being torn apart and reassembled atom by atom, an agonizing, instantaneous eternity. His last conscious thought was a simple, devastating question. What have I done? Darkness. Then, the hum, Elias gasped, jerking upright, his heart pounding against his ribs. He was back in the control room, standing before the primary console. The lights were steady, the readouts normal, displaying the swirling blues and purples of the energy field just prior to activation. Outside the viewport, space was serene. He blinked, disoriented. A dream. It must have been a nightmare, brought on by stress and lack of sleep. He took a deep, shuddering breath, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. He checked the chronometer on the console. Exactly 07:00 station time, the start of his shift, hours before the scheduled experiment activation. Strange. He didn't remember falling asleep here. He must have been more exhausted than he realized. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Elias tapped the receiver icon. Vane here. Doctor. Commander Ivanova's voice came through, calm and professional. Just confirming your readiness for the final systems check at 900. Everything proceeding smoothly on your end. Elias frowned. Commander, didn't we already? Wasn't the experiment scheduled for later today? A pause. Negative. Doctor, final activation sequence is scheduled for 1400 hours, as planned for weeks. The systems check is at 900. Are you feeling all right? Elias, confusion warred with a rising sense of unease. Yes, fine. Commander, just a long night. Ready for the check at 900. He cut the connection, staring at the console. Had he dreamt the entire sequence? The activation, the alarms, the attack, the catastrophic failure? It felt incredibly real, viscerally so. The sensation of being torn apart by the energy wave lingered like a phantom limb. He shook his head, trying to clear it. Stress. It had to be stress. He spent the next few hours going through pre-flight checks he felt he had somehow already done. The sense of déjà vu thick and cloying. Everything proceeded normally. 09:00 arrived. The systems check went flawlessly. He briefed his small team, reviewed the safety protocols. The gnawing feeling that something was wrong, refusing to dissipate. He tried to push it away, focusing on the familiar routine. 1350 hours. Elias stood once more before the console, the station humming around him, the universe waiting outside the viewport. The same sequence of events began to unfold, mirroring his supposed nightmare with chilling precision. Commander. Ivanova's voice came over the comms. Final readiness check complete. All non-essential personnel are secured. We are green across the board for activation on your mark. A cold dread washed over Elias. Acknowledged. Commander, he managed, his voice tight. Initiating final countdown sequence now. Mark. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, his finger hovering over the activation control. Was he condemning them all again? But what choice did he have? To abort now, based on a bad dream, would be professional suicide. He pressed the control. The hum deepened. The lights flickered. The swirling colors intensified, coalescing into the blinding white point of light. Energy yield climbed. Success seemed imminent. Then, the alarms, red lights, warning. Unforeseen energy spike detected. Containment field integrity dropping. 90%. 85. No, Elias whispered, his blood running cold. It was happening again, exactly as before. He tried the dampening protocols. They failed. 70%, 60. Commander, shut it down. .cc. Trying, doctor. Controls are unresponsive. The sharper alarm. Warning. Unidentified vessel approaching. The shuddering impact. The groan of metal. The proximity alert. The panels exploding. The deck tilting. The containment field collapsing. The white light expanding, consuming everything. The tearing, agonizing sensation. Darkness. Then, the hum. Elias gasped, upright before the console. 070 station time. His heart hammered. Not a dream. This was not a dream. He checked the comms log. No record of the previous cycle's events. No indication anything unusual had happened after 700. It was as if the day had simply reset. He stumbled back, collapsing into his chair, trying to breathe. A time loop. His experiment, his breakthrough, had somehow trapped them, or at least him, in a repeating temporal cycle. The implications were staggering, terrifying, and the attack. That was real too. Someone, or something, was trying to destroy his work, coinciding perfectly with the moment of activation. He had to stop the activation sequence. He had to warn Ivanova about the approaching ship. He spent the hours before the 090 systems check frantically trying to find any anomaly in the station logs, any clue about the energy spike or the attacking vessel. Nothing. It was as if the universe reset itself perfectly each time, leaving only his memory intact. At 900, he tried to explain. Commander, we have to abort the experiment. There's going to be an attack, precisely at activation, and the core will destabilize. Ivanova's voice was laced with concern. Elias, what are you talking about? An attack. Have you detected something? No, not yet, but I know it's coming. And the energy spike. Doctor, all simulations are stable. Your readings are normal. Are you sure you're well? Perhaps you need medical attention. Frustration mounted. How could he convince them? He sounded insane. He tried a different approach, fabricating a minor systems malfunction that required delaying the test. Ivanova reluctantly agreed to postpone by a few hours, pending diagnostics. It bought him time, but he knew it wasn't a solution. The loop would likely reset again regardless of the activation time. As the revised activation time approached later that day, Elias felt helpless. He couldn't stop the inevitable sequence. He braced himself. The countdown, the alarms, the attack, the energy wave, the tearing agony. Darkness, the hum, 700. He slumped against the console, despair washing over him. How many times had this happened already? How many more times would it? He was trapped, reliving the worst day of his life. The day his ambitions seemingly doomed everyone on Astra Prime. He tried different tactics in subsequent loops, sabotaging his own equipment subtly, hoping to force a shutdown before the critical point. Each attempt failed. The systems either self-corrected or his sabotage wasn't significant enough to halt the predetermined sequence dictated by the loop's parameters. He tried pleading, reasoning, demanding, but without proof. His warnings were dismissed as stress-induced paranoia. He tried evacuating the control room just before the energy wave hit, only to find himself back at the console at 07:00 the next morning. He was utterly alone in his awareness, trapped in a cycle of failure and impending doom. The attack became a secondary concern, a symptom of the larger problem, the loop itself, triggered by his machine. Yet, the attack was also the most immediate, violent manifestation of the day's horror. He started focusing on it. Who were they? Why attack now? Loop after loop. The sequence remained brutally consistent until the 5th iteration. Or perhaps it was the 6th. He was starting to lose count, the days blurring into a single, recurring nightmare. This time, something was different. The activation sequence began. The hum deepened. The alarms blared on schedule. The external threat alarm screamed, warning, unidentified vessel. But before the impact, before the station hull was breached, a different kind of alarm sounded, one Elias hadn't heard before. Warning, unauthorized life sign detected in Sector Gamma, Deck 4, containment breach. Sector Gamma. That was near the primary science labs, relatively close to the control room. Before Elias could fully process this new variable, the station shuddered from the familiar impact of the attacking vessel. But simultaneously, he heard closer sounds, muffled explosions, the shriek of stressed metal from within the station itself. On a secondary monitor, security feeds flickered, struggling to maintain signal through the interference. One image stabilized for a horrifying second. A figure, tall and lean, clad in dark, form-fitting armor of unfamiliar design, moved with predatory grace down a corridor in Sector Gamma. She. Elias thought he glimpsed feminine contours beneath the armor, dispatched 2 station security personnel with brutal, swift efficiency, wielding some kind of energy weapon that flashed violet. Her movements were inhumanly fast, precise. Then, the feed died as another explosion rocked the station. The containment field collapsed. The white light surged. The agony, darkness, the hum, 700. Elias stood before the console, panting. The image of the armored figure burned into his mind. An infiltrator, not just an external attack, but an internal one as well, happening concurrently. A Zoryn. The armor configuration, the speed, the reported violet energy signature, it matched fragmented intelligence reports on the Zoryn ascendancy, a reclusive, technologically advanced, and notoriously aggressive species from the Perseus arm. They viewed unchecked technological advancement, particularly in energy fields that tapped into subspace or quantum realms, as inherently destabilizing and a threat to cosmic balance. His experiment. They were here to stop his experiment. This changed everything. The loop wasn't just trapping him, it was trapping one of them too. The Zoryn warrior. Did she remember the loops as he did? He had to find her. The next loop. Elias abandoned his attempts to halt the experiment directly. His priority shifted. As soon as the station day began at 700, he used his high-level access codes to monitor internal security feeds, specifically focusing on Sector Gamma, Deck 4, waiting for the moment the breach alarm would sound later in the day. He had to anticipate her arrival. He watched the designated area for hours, the normal routines of the station playing out, technicians moving through corridors, routine maintenance checks. The sense of déjà vu was almost suffocating. He knew what was coming. The alarms, the attack, the end. But now, there was a new element, a deadly variable moving somewhere within the station's walls. The hours crawled by, 1,300, 1,330. Any moment now, He kept his comms channel muted, ignoring Ivanova's routine checks. His focus was entirely on the security monitors. The main experiment activation sequence began in the quantum resonance chamber, automated for the initial stages. Elias ignored the flashing readiness indicators on his main console. Right on schedule, the alarms started. Energy spike, containment failing. Then, the internal breach alarm. Warning: unauthorized life sign detected in Sector Gamma, Deck 4. Containment breach. Elias zoomed in on the corridor where he'd seen her before. Empty. He switched feeds rapidly, scanning adjacent sections. There, a flicker of movement near Access Junction 4 Gamma 7. He saw her for only a second, a blur of dark armor blending into the shadows. Before she slipped through a maintenance hatch, she was moving fast, heading deeper into the station's core infrastructure, likely towards the resonance chamber or its power conduits. Simultaneously, the external attack alarm screamed. The station shuddered violently from the first impact. Lights flickered. Elias gripped the console, forcing himself to remain calm. He knew the sequence. He had maybe 2 minutes before the containment collapse reached critical, before the energy wave propagated. 2 minutes to intercept the Zoryn infiltrator. He grabbed a plasma sidearm from the emergency locker, its weight unfamiliar but reassuring in his hand. He bypassed the control room lockdown protocols with his command override and sprinted out into the corridor. Just as emergency lighting bathed the passage in an eerie red glow, the station groaned around him. Distant explosions echoed through the decks. Personnel were shouting, confused, scared, caught in the sudden chaos. Elias ignored them, pushing past, his eyes fixed on the route towards Access Junction 4 Gamma 7. He was a physicist, not a soldier. His heart hammering against his ribs, not just from exertion but from sheer terror. But he had to know if she remembered, if they were both trapped in this hell together. He rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a security team rushing towards Sector Gamma. Dr. Vane, get back to a safe zone, the lead officer yelled. Negative, Elias shouted back. Not slowing down, there's an infiltrator. Sector Gamma, heading for the core. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, but continued on their original path, likely following standard procedure to secure the breached area first. Elias was on his own. He reached the maintenance corridor near the access junction. The hatch she'd used hung open, slightly warped. He peered into the dimly lit shaft beyond. Service conduits, pipes, wiring harnesses snaked into the gloom. He could hear faint sounds from below, rhythmic scraping, metal on metal. She was close, taking a deep breath. Elias swung himself into the shaft, finding purchase on a maintenance ladder bolted to the wall. He descended quickly, the plasma pistol held awkwardly before him. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burning insulation. Below, the scraping stopped. Silence. He paused, listening intently. Only the groaning protests of the station and the distant, rhythmic blare of alarms reached him. Where was she? A flicker of movement in the shadows below and to the left. He aimed the pistol, his hand shaking. Identify yourself, he called out, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. Silence answered him. Then, a low, feminine voice, devoid of inflection, but carrying an undeniable edge of menace, spoke from the darkness. The human scientist, Elias Vane, your reckless experiment ends now. From the shadows, she emerged. Commander Thaless, her helmet retracted, revealing a face that was strikingly beautiful yet severe, with high cheekbones, intense, dark eyes that seemed to absorb the faint light, and skin with a subtle, pearlescent sheen. Her features were alien, certainly, but undeniably humanoid. sculpted by generations of genetic refinement for peak physical prowess. She held an energy rifle aimed directly at his chest, its violet emitter glowing ominously. "You," Elias breathed, lowering his own weapon slightly in surprise. He hadn't expected her to know his name. "You're the Zoryn. I am Commander Thaless of the Zoryn Ascendancy," she stated calmly, her stance perfectly balanced, despite the precarious footing in the service tunnel. "Your work threatens cosmic stability. It must be neutralized. Permanently neutralized," Elias repeated, a bitter laugh escaping him. "It already is. Can't you feel it? We're trapped." "Both of us." Thaless tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Trapped. Explain." "The energy release from the chamber combined with whatever your people did externally." Elias gestured vaguely upwards. "It created a temporal anomaly, a time loop. We're reliving the same day, over and over." He searched her face for any sign of recognition, any hint that she shared his impossible predicament. Her eyes narrowed fractionally. "Time loop. An intriguing, if convenient, fabrication. Doctor. Designed to stall." "It's not a fabrication," Elias insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. The station gave another violent shudder. Debris rained down from the shaft ceiling. The ambient light flickered more intensely. They didn't have much time. "Think. Doesn't any of this feel familiar? Haven't you done this before? Breached the station, fought security, cornered me." Thaless remained silent for a moment, her gaze unwavering. Elias could see the faint, pulsing glow of the energy rifle's core reflected in her dark eyes. Was she considering it? Or was she just calculating the optimal moment to fire? "My mission parameters are clear," she said finally, her voice flat. "Eliminate the source of the quantum instability. That is you, Doctor, and your device. Temporal anomalies are irrelevant." She raised her rifle slightly. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Elias's desperation. He raised his own pistol again, knowing it was likely useless against her armor and skill. "Don't. Please. If you kill me, if you destroy the chamber now, we might be stuck like this forever. Don't you understand? We have to work together to break the cycle." Another tremor shook the shaft, stronger this time. A large pipe overhead burst, spraying coolant gas that hissed as it dissipated. The low, pervasive hum of the station was escalating into a high-pitched whine. The energy wave was coming. Thaless glanced upwards momentarily, assessing the station's deteriorating condition, then fixed her gaze back on Elias. There was something in her eyes now, a flicker of uncertainty perhaps, masked by ingrained discipline. "Work together," she echoed, the concept seemingly alien to her. "Yes, to survive this, to escape," Elias urged, lowering his weapon deliberately, holding his hands out in a placating gesture. "I don't know how, but killing each other again won't solve it. I know. I've seen this day end too many times." The whining reached a crescendo. The metal around them began to glow faintly. The air crackled with imminent energy discharge. Thaless looked from Elias to the vibrating walls, her decision seemingly made in that instant. She didn't fire. Instead, she gave a curt nod. "If what you say is true, human, then logic dictates cooperation is the only variable not yet attempted." Relief washed over Elias, so potent it almost buckled his knees. But there was no time. The energy wave hit, the familiar, agonizing sensation of temporal displacement tearing through them both. Darkness. The hum. 700. Elias found himself standing before the console. The events of the previous loop vivid in his memory. He looked towards Sector Gamma, towards the access junction where he had confronted Thaless. She remembered. He was sure of it. Her nod, her final words, implied awareness. They weren't alone in this anymore. This loop felt different. Hope, fragile yet persistent, flickered within him. He wasn't just trying to survive, he was trying to connect. He skipped the routine checks, bypassed his usual frantic attempts to warn Ivanova. At 705, he headed straight for Sector Gamma, Deck 4. He didn't take a weapon this time. He found a small, unused storage closet near the maintenance access junction she always used and waited. Hours passed. The station followed its prescribed routine. Elias sat in the darkness, meditating on the nature of the loop, on the Zoryn warrior, on the possibility of escape. Around 1350, he heard the faint, distant sounds of her arrival through the thin wall, muffled impacts. The hiss of a cutting tool, likely bypassing security measures. He waited until he heard the maintenance hatch open, then stepped out of the closet just as Thaless, helmet retracted, was about to descend into the service shaft. She froze instantly, her hand dropping to the energy weapon holstered at her thigh, her body tensing into a combat-ready stance. Her eyes, dark and piercing, fixed on him. There was no immediate hostility this time, but wary assessment. "You remember," Elias stated quietly, keeping his hands visible, palms open. Thaless didn't relax her stance, but she didn't draw her weapon either. "The temporal anomaly you described," she said, her voice low and controlled. "It is consistent with observed phenomena. Each cycle repeats with near-perfect fidelity, save for our retained consciousness." "Our retained consciousness," Elias repeated softly. "So you've been, how many times for you?" "This is the 7th iteration, where full memory retention has been achieved," Thaless replied precisely. "Prior cycles involved fragmented awareness, dismissed as operational stress. 7th. He'd lost count himself, but that sounded about right. "Okay," Elias said, taking a cautious step closer. "Okay, so we agree, we're trapped, and fighting each other, or ignoring each other hasn't worked." "Correct," Thaless conceded, her gaze sweeping the corridor, assessing potential threats even as they spoke. "Your previous suggestion of cooperation remains the logical alternative." "Good. Because the station is still going to be attacked externally, and my machine is still going to overload, and we're still going to be disintegrated by that energy wave." He glanced at his wrist chrono. "Approximately 12 minutes. Unless we do something different," Thaless nodded curtly. "My primary mission objective is the neutralization of your quantum resonator. Its unstable energy signature precipitated this crisis and likely attracted the external aggressors." She gestured towards the shaft. "I calculate a 73% probability of success if I can reach the primary power conduit and trigger a targeted overload before the main energy cascade." Elias shook his head. "No, that won't break the loop. It might even make it worse. Destabilize the temporal field itself. I think the loop is centered on the resonance chamber's core during the energy spike. Destroying a conduit might just change the parameters of our prison, not unlock the door." He paused, thinking rapidly. "The problem isn't just the energy spike. It's the specific quantum state it achieves. Maybe we need to modify the reaction, not stop it." Thaless considered this, her alien physiology betraying little emotion. But Elias sensed intense concentration behind her eyes. "Modify? How? I don't know yet," Elias admitted. "But the control room gives me access to the core programming. If I can input specific dampening frequencies or alter the particle injection sequence fractions of a second before the overload, the control room is heavily shielded." Thaless interrupted. "And during the energy cascade, it becomes the epicenter. Survival probability within that chamber approaches 0. We don't survive anyway, Elias countered. We just reset. But maybe, if we can change the conditions of the reset, we can break the pattern. We need to get to the control room together. You can protect us, get us through the chaos during the attack, and I can work the console. Thaless was silent for a long moment, evaluating the proposal. The logic was sound, if terrifyingly risky. Their current strategies led only to repetition, trying something radically different, targeting the heart of the anomaly itself, offered a faint possibility of change. The external assault commences in approximately 9 minutes, she stated. Hull breach will occur shortly after. Internal defenses will activate. Reaching the control room from this location under those conditions will be challenging. We've got 7 loops worth of experience with the timing, Elias said grimly. We know when the impacts hit, where the security teams deploy. We can anticipate. She gave another sharp nod. Agreed. We move now. Follow my lead. Stay low. Do exactly as I say. Without waiting for confirmation, Thaless slipped back into the main corridor, moving with silent, fluid speed. Elias hurried after her, his physicist's mind racing, trying to calculate the precise adjustments needed, while his body struggled to keep up with the genetically engineered warrior navigating the path towards the eye of the temporal storm. They moved through secondary corridors and serviceways, Thaless expertly avoiding security patrols and choosing routes that offered maximum cover. The station was still operating normally, personnel oblivious to the impending doom Elias and Thaless carried in their shared memories. The tension was palpable. Twice, they had to freeze in darkened alcoves as technicians passed nearby, whistling idly or complaining about replicator malfunctions. As the chronometer neared 1,400, the familiar pre-activation hum intensified. Thaless quickened the pace, her hand occasionally gesturing for Elias to halt or proceed. Then, the first alarm, energy spike, followed immediately by the external attack warning. Now, Thaless commanded, sprinting down a junction as the first distant impact shuddered through the deck. Red emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. People started shouting, running in confusion. Chaos erupted. Thaless moved through it like a phantom, weaving around panicked crew members, her energy rifle now held at the ready, though she didn't fire. Elias struggled to keep up, his lungs burning. Explosions rocked the station more frequently now. One blast nearby sent a shower of sparks down from the ceiling, forcing them to divert through a smoke-filled laboratory. They encountered resistance near the main command spire access. A security team, weapons raised, blocked the corridor. Halt. Identify yourselves, the lead officer yelled over the din. Before Elias could even think, Thaless moved. She didn't attack them directly but fired precise energy bursts at the ceiling supports above the security team. Heavy panels and conduit housings crashed down, blocking the corridor and forcing the officers to scramble back, creating the diversion they needed. Move, she ordered, pulling Elias through a side door marked environmental controls. They navigated a maze of humming machinery and temperature control ducts, the sounds of battle echoing around them. The station groaned continuously now. Elias could feel the temporal instability building, a strange pressure in the air, a tingling on his skin. They were running out of time. They emerged into the corridor directly outside the quantum resonance control room, just as another massive impact threw them both off their feet. Elias landed hard, the wind knocked out of him. Thaless recovered instantly, scanning their surroundings. The control room door, heavily reinforced, was sealed. Override. Thaless snapped, gesturing to the access panel beside the door. Elias scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his side, and slapped his palm onto the panel. His command codes flashed green. The heavy door hissed open, revealing the control room, now bathed in the flashing red emergency lights and the chaotic glare of the overloading console screen. The white light at the core was already expanding. "Get to the console," Thaless ordered, positioning herself just inside the doorway, rifle raised, covering their entry. "I will hold this position." Elias stumbled towards the main console, the energy readings confirming imminent collapse. Containment field below 30%. He had seconds, maybe a minute at most. His mind raced, pulling up the core programming interface, his fingers flying across the holographic controls. He needed to introduce a counter frequency, a specific quantum signature that might disrupt the loop's formation without causing total system annihilation. It was based more on intuition honed by loops of observation than solid theory. He initiated the sequence, inputting complex algorithms. The console protested, spitting out error messages, fighting his commands as the energy surge intensified. Outside the control room, Elias heard the distinctive violet flash crack of Thaless's energy rifle firing rapidly, followed by the heavier thuds of station security plasma bursts. She was engaged. "Status," Thaless called out, her voice strained but steady, punctuated by weapons fire. "Almost there," Elias grunted, overriding another failsafe. "Just need to synchronize the injection pulse." The white light on the screen pulsed violently, filling the viewport. The tearing sensation began, faint at first, then rapidly intensifying. "Now." He slammed his palm down on the execute command. The control room lights flickered wildly. The console went momentarily dark, then flared back to life with screeching alarms. The tearing sensation peaked, an unbearable agony. Elias cried out, bracing himself against the console. He saw Thaless stumble back from the doorway, her rifle firing one last time before the white light consumed everything. Did it work? Did he change anything? Darkness. The hum. 700. Elias gasped, finding himself not at the console, but slumped in his chair nearby. He looked up. The console was active, displaying the normal pre-activation state, 700. It hadn't worked. The despair was crushing. All that effort, the fight to reach the room, the last-second calculation, for nothing. Another reset, another day identical to the last. He sat there for a long time, head in his hands. What was the point? Maybe Thaless was right. Maybe simple destruction was the only answer. The chime for the comms startled him. Ivanova's routine check. He ignored it. He felt drained, hopeless. But then, a flicker of memory. Something different about the very end of the last loop. A slight variation in the energy signature just before the whiteout. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. But his command, the counter frequency he'd injected, it had registered. It hadn't stopped the loop, but it had altered something fundamental within the energy cascade itself. It wasn't a failure. It was data. He stood up, a renewed sense of purpose, albeit fragile, returning. Okay, that attempt didn't break the loop, but it influenced it. What if the frequency was wrong? What if the timing was off? What if he needed more power, or less? What if he needed to modulate the Zoryn energy signature somehow? He looked towards the door, towards Sector Gamma. He needed Thaless, not just for protection, but for her knowledge, her weapon, her ship, her physiology. They were all part of this equation now. He had tried manipulating his side of the event. Maybe they needed to manipulate both sides simultaneously. He left the control room, this time heading not for the storage closet, but directly towards the maintenance hatch. Arriving well before Thaless was due, he checked his chrono. 815. He had hours. He sat on the cold deck plate, leaning against the corridor wall, and waited. He must have dozed off. exhaustion finally claiming him despite the adrenaline. Because the next thing he knew, a boot nudged his shoulder. Not gently. He looked up into the severe, impatient face of Commander Thaless. She stood over him, fully armored, helmet retracted, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. "You are deviating from the established pattern, Doctor," she stated, her voice flat. "The optimal strategy requires coordinated movement at 1358 hours. Elias scrambled to his feet. "I know, I'm sorry, I was thinking. It didn't work." Getting to the control room. My frequency pulse. I observed the energy signature variance. Thaless confirmed, surprising him. Her senses were clearly far more acute than his. Marginal, but present. Insufficient to disrupt the temporal stasis field. Right, insufficient, Elias agreed. But it did something. That's the key, I think. I think we need more than just a counter frequency. We need to harmonize our energies, somehow. My machine, your Zoryn tech, maybe even us. It sounded crazy, even to him. Thaless raised a skeptical eyebrow. Harmonize. Explain your hypothesis. Look, the loop was triggered by my quantum resonator reaching a critical state just as your ship attacked, and you boarded. It's a convergence of human and Zoryn high-energy events. Maybe escaping requires a similar convergence, but controlled, intentional. He paced the corridor, thinking aloud. Your energy rifle, the power source on your ship outside, my resonator. They all operate on principles that manipulate fundamental forces. What if we could create a resonant frequency between them, keyed to the exact moment the loop resets? The external vessel is currently unresponsive, Thaless reminded him. Its temporal signature is caught in the same stasis field as the station. Direct interface is impossible. Maybe not direct, Elias mused. But its energy signature is still present, a constant factor in the equation. Your rifle, however, that's here. With us, its energy signature is unique. What if you fired it? Not at me, not at security, but into the resonance chamber's energy field at the precise moment I introduce a modifying code at the console. Thaless stared at him, her expression unreadable. You propose discharging my primary weapon directly into an overloading quantum core. The energy interaction would be unpredictable, catastrophic, potentially, Elias conceded, but less catastrophic than infinite repetition. We need to try something drastic, something that fundamentally alters the quantum state that keeps resetting. Introducing your weapon's energy signature directly into the cascade. It might be the key we're missing. A Zoryn key for a Zoryn lock, perhaps. She considered this for several moments, her gaze distant. Elias could almost see the complex calculations running behind those dark eyes, weighing probabilities, risks, potential gains. The logic, however dangerous, was sound. All previous attempts focused solely on manipulating the human element, the resonator. Incorporating a Zoryn element directly into the core event was the next logical, if terrifying, step. The precision required would be absolute, she said finally. Coordinating my discharge with your console input to the exact picosecond within the cascade sequence. We can do it, Elias insisted. We can use the loop itself to practice. We fail. We reset. We adjust the timing. We keep adjusting until we get it right. Thaless gave a slow nod. Agreed. This strategy presents a higher probability of success, albeit with significantly increased risk of unforeseen consequences. She looked towards the access hatch. We proceed as per the previous iteration's timeline. Ingress. Movement to the control room. However, our objective upon arrival is altered. You will prepare the console sequence. I will prepare my weapon. We synchronize on your mark. Right. Elias said, feeling a renewed surge of adrenaline, this time mixed with a profound sense of trepidation. They weren't just trying to escape anymore. They were trying to conduct the most dangerous, high-stakes experiment imaginable, using their own existence and the fabric of time as the laboratory. They waited. The hours passed with agonizing slowness, punctuated only by the routine sounds of the station. Elias tried to refine the console sequence in his mind, calculating the harmonics needed to potentially integrate the Zoryn energy signature. Thaless remained perfectly still, a statue carved from discipline, conserving her energy, her focus absolute. They moved. The journey to the control room was becoming grimly familiar. The alarms, the attack, the chaos, the panicked crew, the security confrontation, Thaless's calculated diversions. They moved with greater efficiency this time, anticipating obstacles, shaving precious seconds off their transit time. They reached the control room door slightly earlier than the last loop. Elias slapped the panel. The door hissed open. Inside, the console was already flashing red, the white light beginning its ominous expansion. Go, Thaless commanded, taking her defensive position at the door. Elias didn't need telling. He flew to the console, fingers blurring across the interface, pulling up the sequence he'd devised. It felt more complex, more dangerous than the last attempt. He glanced back. Thaless stood firm, her rifle raised, but angled towards the resonance chamber viewport, not the corridor. She was ready. The sounds of conflict outside were already starting. Timers synchronized. Elias called out, watching the cascade progression. Energy spike accelerating. Prepare for discharge on my mark. 5, 4, 3. He could feel the temporal distortion building, the air vibrating. Thaless braced herself, the violet emitter on her rifle glowing brighter. 2, 1. Mark. Elias executed the command sequence. Simultaneously, Thaless fired. A searing beam of pure violet energy lanced across the control room, striking the expanding white light of the quantum core just as Elias's code hit the system. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The two energy fields collided with unimaginable force. The white light didn't dissipate. Instead, it flared, infused with crackling violet tendrils. The tearing sensation returned, but 1,000 times worse, accompanied by a sound that wasn't just heard but felt, a reality-shattering resonance that vibrated through Elias's very atoms. The control room seemed to twist, distorting like taffy. The console exploded, showering Elias with fiery debris. He saw Thaless thrown back against the far wall, her armor sparking, before the combined energy wave obliterated his senses. It wasn't just disintegration this time. It felt like fusion, darkness, silence. No hum. Elias floated in a void. Formless. Senseless. Consciousness persisted, but detached from physical sensation. There was no pain, no tearing, just an echoing silence where the station's hum should have been. Had it worked? Had they broken the loop? Or had they annihilated themselves completely? Then, another presence. Not seen or heard, but felt. A mind brushing against his own. Thaless. She was here, in this void, with him, her. Thoughts, alien yet suddenly comprehensible, mingled with his own. Surprise, confusion, shared awareness. Elias. Her thought echoed in his mind, clear as speech. Thaless. Are you? Are we? The loop is broken, she projected, a sense of certainty underpinning the thought. The temporal stasis field collapsed, but the energy confluence, it bound us. Bound. He focused inward, trying to sense his own form. his own mind, and found it inextricably intertwined with hers. Their consciousnesses overlapped, memories bleeding into one another, perspectives merging. He could feel her discipline, her warrior's focus, her deep-seated Zoryn sense of cosmic order. He could also feel her surprise, her dawning realization of their shared state, and she, presumably, could feel his chaotic blend of scientific curiosity, fear, and a desperate hope that felt startlingly intimate, shared between minds. Bound how? Elias projected the question, apprehension mixing with wonder. Quantum entanglement, came the reply, infused with his own scientific terminology, effortlessly accessed from his mind. The resonator cascade, modulated by your code and infused with my weapon's energy signature, didn't just disrupt the temporal field. It entangled our quantum states at a fundamental level. They were no longer just two individuals sharing a memory of a time loop. They were, in some profound way, becoming one entity. The thought was terrifying, yet strangely, not unwelcome. In the crucible of the loops, facing death and reset countless times, a bond had formed between them, forged in shared desperation and grudging respect, evolving into something deeper, trust, understanding, perhaps even affection. This entanglement felt like a physical manifestation of that emotional convergence. Slowly, sensation returned, not the feel of deck plates or consoles, but something else, a soft pressure, a gentle light filtering through closed eyelids. They, possessed physical form again. Elias opened his eyes. He was lying on a soft surface, not the hard floor of the control room. Filtered sunlight streamed through a high window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The architecture was unfamiliar, elegant curves and organic lines. Nothing like the functional utilitarianism of Astra Prime. He turned his head. Thaless lay beside him, her eyes already open, watching him. She looked different, still recognizably herself. The sharp Zoryn features, the pearlescent skin, but softened somehow. The harsh edges of the warrior were overlaid with a new vulnerability, a shared awareness reflected in her dark eyes. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, not of electricity, but of pure information. A flood of shared sensation and emotion that was overwhelming yet clarifying. "Where are we?" Elias whispered, his voice raspy. "Not Astra Prime," Thaless replied, her voice also softer, less clipped. She sat up, looking around the room. It appeared to be some kind of recovery chamber, sparsely furnished but comfortable. The energy release. It seems to have displaced us, not just in time, but potentially in space as well. Elias pushed himself up, feeling strangely whole, yet fundamentally altered. He could still feel her presence intertwined with his consciousness, a constant, quiet hum beneath his own thoughts. It wasn't invasive, but rather complementary, displaced. So, we're not just out of the loop, we're somewhere else entirely. It seems logical. Thaless agreed. She swung her legs over the side of the bio bed they shared, standing up. She wore simple, soft gray garments, not her Zoryn armor. Elias realized he wore a similar outfit, their clothes, their weapons, likely lost in the transit. Our entanglement may have acted as a conduit, anchoring us as space-time reconstituted around us. They explored the small chamber, finding water, nutrient paste, and a simple fresher unit. There was one door, sealed but responsive to a touch panel beside it. After a moment's silent communion, a shared decision made without words, Thaless touched the panel. The door slid open noiselessly. Beyond lay a corridor, wider than those on Astra Prime, bathed in the same soft, indirect light. The air smelled clean, faintly floral, There was no hum of machinery, only a profound silence. They walked cautiously down the corridor, their footsteps muffled on the slightly yielding floor surface. Their minds remained linked, sharing sensory input, analyzing their surroundings with two perspectives operating as one. It made them incredibly alert, missing nothing. They encountered no one. The structure, wherever they were, seemed deserted. Eventually, the corridor opened into a vast, spherical chamber. In the center floated a complex, crystalline structure, pulsing with gentle, internal light. Patterns shifted across its surface, intricate and mesmerizing. Data streams, Elias realized, but unlike any he had ever encountered. As they approached, a voice echoed within the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't spoken language, but direct telepathic communication, resonating within their entangled minds. Welcome, convergent souls. Your trial is complete. Elias and Thaless stopped, instinctively moving closer together, turning to face the source of the voice, the crystal. Who are you? Elias projected, cautious but curious. What is this place? Thaless added, her thought tinged with Zoryn discipline demanding order. I am the Nexus, the voice replied, calm and ancient. This place is a waypoint, a sanctuary outside the conventional bounds of space-time. You triggered an unstable quantum event. I contained it, shaping it into a crucible, the loop you experienced, to test the potential for reconciliation between your species. Elias stared at the crystal, stunned. The loop wasn't an accident. It was a test, orchestrated by this Nexus entity. You created the loop. You trapped us. Containment was necessary, the Nexus responded, its tone unchanging. Uncontrolled quantum disruption threatens manifold realities. Your species, human and Zoryn, stand at a precipice, driven by mutual fear and technological ambition towards inevitable conflict. Your interaction within the crucible was designed to foster understanding, to force cooperation where only hostility existed. You used us, Thaless projected, a flash of indignation rising within their shared consciousness. You manipulated our reality, observation, and catalysis. The Nexus corrected gently. The choices within the loop were always yours. Hostility led to reset. Destruction led to reset. Only collaboration, culminating in the voluntary harmonization of your distinct energy signatures, an act of profound trust and integration, could destabilize the temporal framework and satisfy the conditions of the test. Elias processed this, the pieces falling into place, the attacks, the energy spikes, the loop itself, all elements of a cosmic experiment run by an ancient quantum intelligence. And they, Elias Vane, the human scientist, and Thaless, the Zoryn enforcer, were the subjects. Yet, the outcome, their entanglement, their survival, it wasn't punitive, it felt like a graduation. Why? Elias asked. Why us? Why this test? Potential. The Nexus replied, your two species possess the potential to unlock deeper understandings of the universe, or to annihilate yourselves and endanger others. Conflict arises from fear of the unknown, from the failure to see the self in the other. The crucible forces that recognition. Your entanglement is proof that synthesis is possible. What happens now? Thaless asked, her pragmatism surfacing. We are displaced. Our people believe us dead. Your entanglement is stable, but requires conscious integration. The Nexus explained. You are pioneers, the first fusion of your kind. This sanctuary will provide the time and resources needed to understand your shared state, to master the potential it unlocks. When you are ready, you may choose your path. Return to your peoples, carrying the message of unity, or explore realms beyond their current comprehension. The crystalline structure pulsed gently. The choice, as always, rests with you. Silence descended once more in the vast chamber, leaving Elias and Thaless alone with the staggering implications. They looked at each other, truly looked, seeing not just the face of the former enemy, but the reflection of their shared journey, their shared consciousness, their shared future. The fear and hostility that had defined their first encounter felt like a distant echo from another lifetime. In its place was a profound connection, deeper than species, stronger than time. Together, Elias projected, the thought simple, absolute. Together, Thaless affirmed, her mental voice merging seamlessly with his. They turned back towards the Nexus, no longer just subjects of a cosmic test, but partners ready to embrace their unprecedented existence. Their journey through the loops of time had ended, but their journey as the first entangled human Zoryn consciousness was just beginning. Outside the sanctuary, the universe awaited, unaware of the change that had occurred, unaware of the symbol of hope that had been forged in the heart of a temporal storm. They would face it, explore it, perhaps even change it, bound by quantum forces and an understanding born from shared adversity. The ending was not just happy, it was transformative. A new beginning written not in the stars, but in the very fabric of their combined souls. They would learn, they would grow, and when they were ready, they would show both humans and Zoryn that unity was not just possible, but essential. Their fight to escape the loop was over. Their mission to build a bridge between worlds had just begun.